There are moments when the world feels like it is moving faster than you can breathe, not faster than you can think. You are thinking constantly, endlessly, almost violently, but faster than you can breathe. You lie awake at night with your jaw tight and your shoulders already braced for tomorrow, running through conversations that haven't happened yet, rehearsing responses to problems that may never arrive, calculating outcomes in every direction, as if the sheer force of your attention could hold the future in place. And somewhere beneath all of that mental activity, beneath the planning and the worrying and the relentless forward motion, there is a quiet exhaustion that no amount of productivity ever seems to touch. You have been achieving, you have been performing, you have been keeping up, and still, at the end of the day, and when the noise finally fades, something inside you whispers that it wasn't enough, that you weren't enough, that tomorrow you will need to do it all again, only better, only faster, only more. This is not a personal failure. This is the water you were taught to swim in. The culture that surrounds you was built on the belief that rest is a reward, not a right, that your value is measured in output, that slowing down is falling behind. And so the mind learned to grip, learned to control, learned to treat every moment of stillness as a threat rather than a gift. The body carries this. You feel it in the tightness across your chest when an email arrives unexpectedly. You feel it in the way your breath becomes shallow the moment something doesn't go according to plan. You feel it in the deep, unnamed heaviness that settles in your bones at the end of a week when, by any reasonable measure, you did everything right, and it still didn't feel like peace. If any of this sounds familiar, you are not broken. You are not weak. You are simply someone who has been carrying something very heavy for a very long time, and no one ever showed you how to set it down. These reflections are an invitation to begin, not to fix yourself, not to optimize your suffering, just to breathe differently, think differently, and slowly, very slowly, return to the stillness that has always been waiting for you beneath the noise. If this kind of wisdom resonates with you, consider staying close to this space, because what follows is only the beginning of a much quieter, much deeper conversation. And there's a teaching that has been offered for thousands of years, quietly, without urgency, without demand. It does not ask you to become someone else. It does not promise you a life without difficulty. It simply points to something you already have but may have forgotten how to use: the capacity to pause, to observe, and to respond from a place of clarity rather than fear. Buddhist wisdom does not ask you to abandon ambition or pretend that pain does not exist. It asks something far simpler and far more radical. It asks you to stop fighting reality long enough to actually see it. And in that seeing, something shifts. Not dramatically, not all at once, but the way light shifts in a room when someone finally opens a window, gradually, gently, and with unmistakable warmth. And the first and most immediate teaching is also the most practical. When the storm arrives, and it will arrive, because storms are not exceptions, they are part of the landscape of a human life. The breath is the only tool you always have with you, not a strategy, not a framework. The breath. Right now, as you read these words, there is air entering your body and air leaving it. That movement is happening without your permission and without your effort. It has been happening since the moment you were born. And here is what most people never fully understand. That simple, unremarkable movement is a doorway. Every time you bring your attention to it, not to control it, not to deepen it dramatically, just to notice it, you interrupt the loop. You step even for a moment. It's out of the current of automatic reaction and into something steadier, something that was there all along but invisible beneath the noise. The reactive mind is fast, It sees a message and responds before it has truly read it. It hears criticism and defends before it has truly listened. It encounters uncertainty and braces before it has truly assessed. This speed feels like strength, but it is not strength. It is fear moving quickly. The reflective mind, the one that emerges when you pause long enough to breathe, is not slow because it is weak. It is slower because it is seeing more clearly. It is taking in the full picture before deciding what belongs to it and what does not. Between the moment something happens and the moment you respond, there is a space. That space is not passive. That space is where wisdom lives. And the breath is what keeps that space open. Even one conscious breath, one single inhale through the nose, one complete exhale that allows the shoulders to drop and the jaw to soften is enough to shift the quality of what comes next. Not to fix it, not to control it, just to meet it with a little more of yourself intact. Practice this not as a technique, but as a return. Tomorrow morning, before the phone, before the news, before the first demand of the day reaches you, sit for 1 minute and simply notice your breath moving, not performing mindfulness, not achieving calm, just noticing. Feel the air enter, feel the chest expand, feel the exhale carry something away, and then go about your day. But carry that small moment of stillness with you, the way you might carry a stone in your pocket, something solid to return to when the current gets fast. The mind, left unattended, becomes a garden that grows whatever seeds fall into it. This is not a metaphor for weakness. This is simply the nature of the mind. It is responsive, impressionable, and enormously powerful, which means it can grow extraordinary things given the right conditions. But most people never consciously choose what they plant. They absorb the anxiety of the morning news and let it root. They replay a critical comment from a colleague and water it daily. They carry forward a story about who they are, limited, behind, not quite enough. And that story grows thick and silent until it feels like fact rather than interpretation. Buddhist teaching on the nature of thought is precise about this. A thought is not a truth. It is an event. It arises, it passes, and whether it takes root depends entirely on the attention you give it. Reframing is not forced positivity. It is not the practice of pretending that difficulty is actually fine. It is something more honest and more demanding than that. It is the practice of asking, when something painful arrives, what else is also true? A setback at work is real. The discomfort is real. And also, what does this reveal? What does this redirect? What is being asked of you that you could not have seen from where you were standing before? This question does not erase the difficulty. It places the difficulty inside a larger frame, one where it becomes information rather than verdict. The weeds in a garden do not disappear when you begin tending to it. But when the soil is cultivated and the intention is clear, they no longer dominate. Over time, and with consistent and gentle attention, what grows is what you chose, not what simply fell. The practice is simple and uncomfortable in equal measure. When a thought arrives that feels like a wall, this always happens to me. I never get this right. This is hopeless. Pause. Do not argue with the thought. Do not analyze it. Simply ask, is this the whole picture? And then look for one thing, just one, that the thought left out. One piece of evidence that the story is not as absolute as it sounds. That single interruption, repeated daily, begins to change the texture of the mind's narration. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the default story softens, not into false brightness, but into something more honest. A mind that sees difficulty clearly and sees possibility with equal clarity without insisting that one cancels the other. And there's a particular exhaustion that comes not from what happens to you, but from how completely you allow what happens to move through you. Most people, when an emotion arrives, frustration, disappointment, anxiety, grief, do one of two things. They either suppress it, pushing it down and moving forward as if it weren't there, only to have it resurface later with more force and less context, or they merge with it completely, becoming the emotion so entirely that there is no longer any distance between the feeling and the self. Both responses are exhausting. Both leave you less capable than you were before. Buddhist teaching on emotional observation offers a third way, and it is quieter and more radical than either suppression or surrender. It asks you to become a witness. Imagine standing at the edge of the ocean, and the waves come, some small, some enormous. You do not stop the waves. You do not pretend they are not there. You watch them arrive, you feel their movement, and you observe as they recede. You are not the wave. You never were. You are the shore, present, responsive, and fundamentally unchanged by any single wave's passing. When frustration arrives, you notice it. Frustration is here. When anxiety arrives, you name it without becoming it. Anxiety is moving through me. This small act of naming, of creating even a syllable of distance between the experience and the self, changes the emotional weather. The feeling is still real. Its intensity does not disappear. But you are no longer inside the storm without a reference point. You are watching it with something that remains steady, awareness itself, which no emotion has ever been able to destroy. To develop this capacity, begin with the smallest irritations, not the deep wounds. Those require time and care. Begin with the minor friction of daily life, the delayed meeting, the slow driver, the plan that changed without warning. When these moments arrive, instead of reacting from inside them, try stepping one breath back and naming what you feel. Just the name. Frustration, impatience, disappointment. No story attached, no elaboration. Just the honest, simple name of what is moving through you. That pause, that naming, is the beginning of emotional freedom. And emotional freedom is not the absence of feeling. It is the ability to feel fully without being governed entirely by what you feel. Life does not distribute its difficulties according to your readiness. Your challenges arrive when they arrive. Before you feel prepared, in the middle of things you were already managing, at the worst possible intersection of timing and circumstance. This is not cruelty. This is simply the nature of an existence that was never promised to be smooth. The question that Buddhist wisdom returns to again and again is not how to avoid difficulty, but how to meet it. There is a river in every human life that is patient and persistent. It does not fight the stones in its path with force. It moves around them, over them, through the smallest available opening, always continuing, never stopping, wearing the hardest surfaces soft through the most ordinary motion, simply flowing, simply continuing, simply being what it is. Resilience is not the refusal to be affected. Eon, the person who claims nothing touches them is not strong. They are defended, which is a different thing entirely and a lonelier one. True resilience is the capacity to be genuinely moved by what is hard and to continue moving anyway. Not because you are unaffected, but because you have learned through practice and through patience that difficulty is not the end of the story. It is a chapter, sometimes a very long and painful chapter, but a chapter nonetheless, set inside a narrative that is still being written, that has not yet revealed all of what it contains. Every person who has ever walked through something genuinely hard and arrived on the other side carries a particular quality, not the absence of scars, but the presence of something that the difficulty could not remove. That something is what these teachings are quietly building, one breath, one reframe, one moment of witnessed emotion at a time. When the next obstacle arrives, and it will, try receiving it differently. Not with the clenched teeth of someone who refuses to let it matter, and not with the collapse of someone who has decided it means everything. Try asking, with genuine curiosity, what is this asking of me? Not demanding an immediate answer, just holding the question open, the way you might hold a door open for someone who is still on their way. That question alone shifts the relationship between you and what is difficult. It moves you from victim of circumstance to active participant in your own becoming. The obstacle is still real, the discomfort is still real, but it is now also information, and information, unlike pure suffering, can be used. There is a particular kind of fatigue that has nothing to do with how much you have done. It is the fatigue of trying to manage what was never yours to manage. Other people's opinions of you, the outcome of decisions that depend on 100 variables you cannot see. The past, which is finished, the future, which has not yet begun. The mind, when it is anxious, casts its net very wide. It tries to account for everything, anticipate everything, protect against everything, and the energy this requires is enormous, constant, and ultimately futile, because the things you cannot control do not become more controllable the more you worry about them. They remain exactly as they were, and you return to them emptier than before. The practice of releasing the uncontrollable is not passive resignation. It is an act of precision. The deliberate, honest work of drawing a circle around what is actually yours and releasing with compassion and without drama everything outside of it. What is yours is specific and small. Your effort, your intention, your honesty, your presence, your response to what arrives. That is the circle. Everything outside it, how someone interprets what you said, whether the timing works out, what another person decides, belongs to a larger unfolding that you are part of, but do not author. When you try to author it anyway, you suffer. When you tend to your own circle with full attention and release the rest without guilt, something in the body unclenches. Not all at once, not completely, but noticeably. And the way a room feels different after someone opens the window and the air that had been sitting still finally begins to move. If this reflection is offering you something useful, something you want to return to and continue building upon, consider subscribing and remaining in this space, because the practice of releasing what is not yours is one that deepens with time, and there is much more ahead. Each morning carries a quiet moment before the mind fully assembles its list of what is wrong. A moment before the comparison begins. A moment before the weight of everything unfinished settles back into the chest where it was resting while you slept. In that moment, before anything else, there is an opportunity not to perform gratitude, not to recite affirmations, but to genuinely notice what is still here, the breath still moving, and the body still carrying you. The fact that this day, unlike some days, arrived. Gratitude, in the Buddhist sense, is not the command to feel thankful regardless of what is happening. It is something more honest. It is the trained capacity to see what is present without the mind immediately cataloging what is absent. The mind is wired by design and by culture to scan for lack. This scanning kept your ancestors alive. It kept them noticing the missing berries, the darkening sky, the silence where there should have been sound. But in the modern world, this ancient scanner runs continuously on problems that are not survival threats. The email that wasn't answered, the compliment that wasn't given, the progress that wasn't as fast as you hoped. And because the scanner never stops, Meets the baseline emotional experience of daily life becomes a low hum of insufficiency. Nothing feels complete, nothing feels like enough. Not the meal, not the achievement, not the relationship, not the day. Gratitude does not silence the scanner, but it adds a second voice, quieter at first, then gradually stronger, that notices what the scanner misses: the warmth of the coffee cup, the light in the afternoon, the fact that your heart has been working without pause since before you can remember, asking nothing from you in return. Begin with something almost embarrassingly small. Tomorrow morning, before you check anything, before you assess anything, find one thing, one single, ordinary thing that is still here and is not nothing, not the life you wish you had, not the version of today that went exactly as you planned. Just one thing that is real and present and not entirely absent. A shaft of light, a working body, a person somewhere who knows your name. Hold it for 10 seconds, not longer, just long enough to let it register in the chest rather than only in the thought. That is the practice. Small, undramatic, quietly revolutionary. Because the mind that learns to find one good thing will eventually, without being forced, begin finding more. Not because life changed, because perception did. And perception is the architecture of your experience of being alive. The people you spend your time with and the environments you inhabit are not neutral forces. They are constant inputs shaping the emotional weather of your inner life in ways that are real but often invisible. Buddhist teaching on this is direct. The company you keep matters enormously, and not because you are fragile, but because you are responsive. And responsiveness is not a weakness, it is what makes connection possible. The same quality that allows you to feel close to someone who is kind also allows you to absorb the anxious energy of someone who is chronically critical or afraid. This is not their fault. It is not your fault. It is simply the nature of being a creature that is made for relationship. Managing your relational energy is not about judgment or exclusion. It is about honesty. Some relationships nourish you. They leave you feeling more like yourself, clearer, lighter, more capable. Others consistently drain you. They leave you smaller, foggier, more exhausted than the interaction alone would explain. Both kinds of relationships exist in most lives, and wisdom is not the elimination of the draining ones so much as the conscious cultivation of the nourishing ones. Seek out what the ancient teachers called Kalyana Metta, the good friend, the spiritual companion, the person whose presence makes it easier, not harder, to be the version of yourself you are trying to become. This doesn't mean only seeking people who agree with you or who never challenge you. It means seeking people who challenge you toward growth rather than toward fear, who hold you accountable with warmth rather than shame, who remind you of your better nature when you have forgotten it. Your physical and digital environment carries the same logic. The spaces you inhabit send continuous signals to your nervous system. A cluttered space sends a signal of incompletion. A screen that delivers anxiety before your first cup of coffee sends a signal that the world is on fire and you must respond immediately. These signals accumulate. They are not decisive on their own, but together they create a constant background noise that makes stillness harder to find. Tending to your environment, removing what agitates, adding what soothes, choosing what enters your attention with the same deliberateness you might bring to choosing what you eat is not superficial self-care. It is the construction of conditions in which peace becomes possible. You cannot force peace into being, but you can remove the obstacles that prevent it from arising naturally. These teachings are not a checklist. They are not a performance schedule or a self-improvement program. and they are a direction, a compass, bearing toward a way of being that is quieter, clearer, and more genuinely at home in the actual texture of your life. You will forget them. You will have days when the breath feels irrelevant, and the reframe feels impossible, and the gratitude feels hollow. This is not failure. This is being human, which is the only credential required to walk this path. The practice is not perfection. The practice is returning. Again and again, without self-punishment, without the demand that you should have remembered sooner, just returning to the breath, to the moment, to the small circle of what is actually yours, to the one thing that is still here and is not nothing. You are not the storm. You never were. You are the awareness that watches the storm arrive and watches it pass and remains, steady, continuous, unchanged in its essential nature by any weather that moves through it. That awareness is not something you need to build or earn or deserve. It is already what you are beneath the noise. These practices are simply the art of remembering. May your days carry a little more of that remembering. May the grip in your chest loosen just enough to let something breathe. May you find, in the most ordinary moments of your most ordinary days, the quiet and unmistakable presence of your own peace. And if you would like to continue walking in this direction, to deepen this practice and return to this stillness again and again, subscribe and stay close, because the path continues and you do not have to walk it alone.